My grandmother and grandfather came to this country from Poland when they were 15 and 16 years old. They had no money, no ability to speak English, and they came to an America that afforded them an opportunity to grow a family. My grandfather was a welder in the docks of Boston, Massachusetts, and my grandmother did what a lot of people did, which is take in piecework. Soon they had 6 kids, and they managed to make it through the Depression, and then pretty soon after that, my grandfather died. So my dad, being the oldest child, went home and helped raise those kids, put all those kids through college, and all 6 of those children have had enormously successful lives. America cradled my family in its arms and allowed us to grow and to prosper. That's the kind of America I want to leave for our children. You know, in Kansas, we know how to balance a budget. We're a very frugal, conservative group of folks. I work with Kansans every day in financial advising situations, and I help them balance their budgets. How are we going to balance our budget as a nation? Well, I took a pledge not to raise taxes. So there's an issue here. How much can we really afford to cut taxes? Now, there's some plans that say, folks, we're going to give you massive tax cuts and somehow we're going to grow our way out of this deficit. You know, we tried that in the 1980s. And out of a sense of fairness to both parties, why it didn't work was because Republicans really weren't willing to cut defense spending and Democrats really weren't willing to cut entitlement spending. And so the reality was we ballooned our deficit to the point of being very dangerous. What we have to do in the 1990s is not raise taxes, look at targeted tax cuts for folks, and be very disciplined on the way we conduct ourselves through the 1990s to balance this budget. It's no different when I say to people, you know, you got to cut up your credit card. It's time. You got to use discipline. As Americans, we simply have to use discipline and responsibility to balance this budget in the 1990s. I'm very comfortable taking a pledge not to raise taxes. What I think we have to be enormously careful of is how it is we lower taxes. The kinds of targeted tax cuts I'm going to focus on are things, number one, that help the middle class with education, and number two, help small business people. So how is it we're going to help small businessmen, small farmers? The best way to do that is through tax advantage to them. By extending the unified credit and allowing people to pass assets from one generation to another with more ease, I believe what we'll do is encourage people to stay in their small businesses and to keep their small family farms. The second piece is education. I came from immigrant roots. I really feel strongly that the only way to prosperity and the American dream is through higher education, and it has simply become unaffordable in the United States of America. We have got to allow tax advantages for middle-class families to deduct some of the expenses for their college education so that they too can afford to have those advantages. The Gingrich and Brownback team are extremists. What they did 2 years ago with Medicare is a perfect example of extremism. 2 years ago, they proposed cutting $270 billion from Medicare. Is that what we needed to provide for the solvency of Medicare? No. We do need to address the solvency of Medicare and make sure we have this system around 10 years from now. And we do need to look at cost effectiveness for about $116 billion. The $270 billion they were talking about was to provide tax cuts for those people, some of whom are making over $200,000 a year. My point about this is we have all got to use some discipline to balance this budget. But what we have to also employ is fairness. A couple years ago, I went out to have a nice family dinner with the kids, and I sat down to have dinner, and about 5 to 10 minutes later, a masked man came in, held up the cash register, and then went around to every table and held us up. And I cannot tell you what it is like to see somebody hold a gun to your child's head. I mean, as a mother, everything I live for is my kids. There is nothing in the world more important to me. And in 1 second, this man had the power over me to take the life of my kid. And I can't explain to you in strong enough terms how angry, how visceral the anger is as a mom to watch somebody threaten your child. That experience has changed me forever. It has changed the way I look at the issue of crime. It has changed the way I look at protecting my kids day in and day out. You want to know if I'm soft on crime? Never. I'll never be soft on crime. Much of the reason why I'm running for the United States Senate is because I believe that we must elect, it is critically important this year to elect people that represent the middle, that balanced middle. People who can take from the left and the right, who are not driven by partisan politics, and bring those strains together and find policy that'll bring us on through the next century. Much of why I'm running for the United States Senate is because I represent that middle.